So I've got this shell that I got from a friend of mine as a freebie. It's a maple shell, I'm led to believe, and the bearing edges are okay, nothing amazing, but okay. So I'm going to attempt to make a snare out of it, and what I need to do is cut it in certain places, but I'm undecided to go whether to go for a deep one or whether to cut the middle out and go for a shallow snare. I'm thinking deep because I have a couple of shallow snares anyway, and I don't have a really deep. I mean, we're probably talking 7 or 8 inches. Also, we've got floor tom, we've got the brackets for the shell as well, and it also has a vent in it. So half of me thinks if I just go cut the shell on those two, then probably actually will be cut the shell there and there. So that would make, if I was to cut the shell there and there, it would probably end up being about a 6-inch drum, which wouldn't be too bad. I've got some of these which I could put on it as well. So maybe I'll go for a 6-inch. It does mean cutting both edges, which I'm going to do by hand. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, maybe I'll do that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what I decide. I'm going to start planning and seeing what the best way to fuck this drum up is. Okay, so I've decided what to do. I'm going to cut the shell here, so it cuts all of the existing lug holes out. It does unfortunately leave these ones, and here, so it cuts these out, and it leaves me with that central, fairly central, and about a 6-inch shell. So the way I'm going to cut it is by hand. I've seen this done. I'm going to have a go, pretty confident. So basically I've spaced this saw blade, which is fixed to here, to cut the shell. And it's going to be a backwards and forwards kind of thing. We'll see what happens. Yeah, wish me luck. Okay, so cut the shells, and it's not an easy way of doing it, but it does work. You can see the 2 offcuts there, and you can see the shell as it is now. Decent edges, really good actually, come out really well. Only one minor thing is in my measurements I was ever so slightly out. So where the old badge was, you can see those 2 holes right on the edge. So I've either got a choice. I either try and take that bit off, which is going to be very difficult, or I cut the snare bed in there. It'd be quite a deep bed. Get rid of those 2, and when you're looking at, what is that there? Two and a half inch. I suppose it's not so bad. I mean, if the bed goes, if it's a wide bed, if I put a wide bed on it from there to there, actually it probably won't be too bad. So I'll cut the bed in there, which also means that the vent on the other side will be where the throw is, so it'll hide those holes as well. So yeah, so the old contraption there worked quite well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave it for tonight, because I have a habit of steaming into these things. So I'm going to leave it tonight, and I'm going to come back to it probably tomorrow night. Okay, so I have cut the drum, and I have cut or sanded the bearing edges in by hand. You can see, if you put it against the white background, you can just see the bearing edges there. It probably doesn't look very good there, but if I do that, you can see them there and there. If I line it up, you can just see there, the other one there. This has obviously been done by eye, because I don't have the machinery to do it. And you can see there I just caught the sander on the edge of it, but the hoop will cover that anyway, so I'm not over fussed. And as you can see, because of where the badge was, that's why it's a reasonably deep bearing edge. And what this means is this is the snare side, which does mean that the handcrafted drum badge is upside down, but I'm not really that bothered about that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the bearing edges. I'm going to do these by hand, and I'm going to do a very, well, to be honest, they're going to be flat. They're going to be flat bearing edges like some of the old vintage drums, so I've been told. So I'm just going to sand them over slightly so that there's a bit of a profile, but I'm not going to go mad with them. I'm going to see what kind of effect that has. I haven't really got the equipment to do kind of proper bearing edges, but I am going to have a go and sand them over a little bit, and we'll see. It's all a bit of an experiment, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so bearing edges are sanded. We've got a kind of a vintage. I'm not going to be able to get a decent picture of this, I don't think. You can see it's like a round over edge there. Pretty accurate by hand. But yeah, happy with them. And on the bottom, ever so slightly, just to get a decent focus of this, you can see, there we go, just rounded over, and then you've got the, obviously, the snare beds. So next thing to do now is measure up some hardware. I'll put some hardware on. Now, I cheated because there is a drum company who sells, or who gives away, mats. So I downloaded one of their mats, and it gives you the markings of the lugs, which is awesome. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to mark the lugs up using my trusty, wherever it's gone, so trusty I've lost it. I've got a square, I have no idea where I've put it. I've got one of these, but I've also got a square, so I'll find that. Hopefully I'll bloody find it, and we use that and we'll do that. So yeah, mark some hardware up. I'm going to put some gaffer tape, some masking tape, decorator's tape on the drum first, so as to not scratch stuff up. We'll see how we go. Okay, so now to drill some holes. I've marked the holes out. What I think will look about right, fairly evenly spaced, I think. And we'll drill. So I've just got a very small vise here, and a bit of wood on the vise, which I will drill into so the back doesn't break out. Drill nice and slowly. We'll see how we go. Okay, so holes are drilled. Moment of truth now. Hardware to go on. Okay, so hardware is on, and I must admit it's looking really nice. We've got a few incidental holes that I knew was going to be there anyway. Couldn't do much about that, but the majority of them I've managed to hide. So, and they won't really notice. I suppose when the drum is sitting on the kit, you'll probably see that one, but that's about it. So far I'm really happy, considering shell cost me nothing. The throw and the butt I already had. The tube lugs I got from eBay for 20 quid. So yeah, really happy. So I just got to put the hoops on and get the skins on now. Right, so she is finished. The drum is finished. And there we are. Quite happy with the way it came out for what it cost me. I think it looks pretty cool. The angle might be a better angle. So yeah, just so to finish off, there were some holes you can see here. So what I did is I filled them with plastic wood, it's called. And then I just dabbed a small bit of grain varnish on them, just to help them blend in a little bit. I knew they were always going to be there, but unless you're looking directly at them, they're not too bad. I think I also did some more work on the snare bed. I widened it ever so slightly, and I also put some more time into the bearing edges. I came up with a way of having my sander at an angle that was consistent. So for instance, if this is the drum without the head on, let's see if I can explain this. I managed to mount my sander against the inside bottom edge, and then as the drum went round, the sander went round, so it maintained an angle against this head. So it came more of a probably 45 for half of the thickness of the shell, and the other, so 45 for half of the thickness, and the other half I just rounded over, and it's not sharp. It's quite, the actual bearing edge is quite dull, quite rounded is what I'm trying to say. And I put a controlled sound X, and on the bottom, as I always do, an Aquarian classic snare with some pearl wires. Now, the reason on these, which are just ribbons, it's just ribbon that I cut, that I get from a craft store. Now you can see the snare. Actually, that's a great angle to see the snare bed. You can see that it is quite pronounced. So this wouldn't be happy about taking wide wires. But anyway, the reason I use Aquarian bottom heads is this part, if you can see it, this part of the hoop on the actual drum skin is wider and thicker than Remo or Evans. Remo is about the middle, Evans is a little bit thinner, I find, and the Aquarian is thicker. And what that does is that keeps the distance from between there and the bearing edge a little bit higher, which means as these wear in, which inevitably they do, you can end up with your bearing edge very, very close to the top of the hoop, and I've never liked that, so I always use the Aquarian snare heads. So I haven't gone mad with the tuning, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play what it sounds like through the phone, and then hopefully what it sounds like through the microphone, and we'll see what it sounds like. I've not even played this yet, so I'm literally going to put it straight on a stand and just video it. So let's do that. So that was just through the phone. It's quite lively, probably because it's a very thin shell, because it was a small floor tom. But with the ring, calms it down a little bit. So now I'm just going to put it through a mixer, no effects, just to see what it sounds like. I'll do both actually. I'll do with the ring and without the ring. Hear what it sounds like.